Welcome back. Week 10, baby. We made it. Double-digit weeks. I'm Graham Bartfield, one of the co-owners here at the best fantasy football site in the universe, joined as I always am by my boy, Scott Barrett, and our guy, Jake Tribby. Going through the Week 10 DFS slate, guys. Much better slate than last week. I think we were all kind of sick and tired of Week 9. It's on to Week 10. I kind of started this week not really loving this slate, but the more I've researched, the more I've gone into it. This is a fun slate, man. I'm excited to talk to you guys. As always, Scott, Jake, what's going on, man?
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Graham.
You're very welcome. Beard's looking mighty fine, my friend.
Yeah, I appreciate it. How you doing, Jake?
Just doing good.
Back to the gym, I know.
Yeah. I'm got the testosterone nice and high. Oh, I've not squatted in quite a while. But yeah, I got the T nice and high for a high T slate. I think this is going to be a pretty fun one this week, especially for tournaments. I think there's a lot of good quarterback. And
it's the most high T play of the week. Tyler Algier.
No, it's big boy Will Levis. We'll get to him.
I think you're right. I think
definitely
you're right.
Levis. It's definitely
hell yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. You guys ready? Scott, you ready? Jake, you ready?
Yeah.
Let's do it. Browns, Ravens, get it going. Ravens 6.5 point favorites, over under 38. Not many injury notes really in this game. Browns did lose Jedrick Willis for the season. They're down Jack Conklin too. Ravens side, Keaton Mitchell popped up with a hamstring injury. He's been dealing with this hamstring issue for a while now, but he got back to a full practice today. Should be a split backfield with him obviously running super hot. Scott, I'll throw it to you first, man. What are your thoughts on this game? Lamar bounce back week, tough spot, obviously. I don't think anybody's going to play him up there at 8K.
Yeah, I think this game sucks. I think we can just breeze right through this. Yeah, I mean, there's always credence to playing Lamar Jackson any week he's under own. That's basically the argument for him. But Harbaugh said earlier this week in a press conference, or actually 2 weeks ago, he talked about recommitting to the running backs inside the red zone. And I think that's what we've seen from Lamar's back-to-back duds is really the lack. The offense is rolling. It's just those running backs vulturing those touchdowns. And just usage has really plummeted in that area for Lamar. I have no interest in Zay Flowers. He's been overrated for like 8 weeks now. Mark Andrews, you could play just because he's the best tight end, and maybe he has a spike week, but volume's really not there to the degree that it was last season. I somewhat question the spike week upside. You can make a case for Gus Edwards, especially if Keaton Mitchell is out. This is a gross, probably 3-way committee if everyone's healthy. But he does seem to be the preferred option near the end zone. So maybe he scores multiple times like he's done a few times over the past few weeks. Not really on him though. Cleveland side, the only one getting me kind of excited is Amari. Just you look at the usage and it's like easy high-end wide receiver 2 usage. And like since week 2, like the production's been like right there, like a really impressive production for a guy who ranks bottom 3 in catchable target rate. And, Deshaun Watson last week ranked top 5 in catchable throw rate. He looked pretty good. So like the only thing holding him back was just like competent quarterback play. And maybe it's there. That said, the matchup is brutal. We always want to play him at home. He's on the road this week. So like I said, there's really no one I expect to be to have in too many of my lineups. What do you think, Jake?
I mean, Lamar at 2% is always in play for tournaments. Cleveland does run man at the highest rate. That should give Lamar, a little more room to run. At the same time, only 29 rushing yards the last time these teams played. I think Cleveland's probably going to use Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah as a spy. I think that's what they did last time these teams matched up. But, again, Lamar Jackson, 2%. That's an argument on its own. Outside of that, I don't have a ton of interest. You could, make an argument for Jerome Ford. I don't really think this is the week to play him. After we saw a much better workload last week for him. Outside of that, I really don't have much here.
I mean, I think he's still like a strong value. I just forgot to mention him. Like he had 20 plus carries, 6 plus targets. That's like rare volume. That's valuable volume. There's only been something like 9 instances of a running back doing that this season, and those running backs average well over 20 fantasy points per game. And like, he's definitely mispriced. For me, it comes down to touchdown upside. Since week 4, he's only played on 8 red zone snaps. It's like 8%, and it ranks like 73rd among all running backs. It's
their implied total is 16 this week. So.
Yeah, I'm not really interested in Ford, man. Hunt has 12 carries inside the 20. Ford has 2. So yeah, I'm with you though. He does project as a strong value. I actually think there's a few better values on this slate though. This game, I think you're great though. That in general, this game stinks. Cooper's really the only reason, the only guy I like in this game for all the reasons Scott outlined already. Yeah, and I think we've just been right on Flowers. He's just like a low ceiling wide receiver 3 for fantasy. I was going to note too, he's also like his average depth of target is completely cratered. Beckham and Bateman both have way more downfield looks over the last couple of weeks too. So, all right, let's move on to a better game. Texans at Bengals. Some injury notes here. Dameon Pierce is out. Kind of surprisingly, Nico Collins popped up with an injury, calf injury earlier this week. He's not going to play, but Robert Woods should be back. He got to a full practice today. So it'll be Dell, Woods, and Noah Brown. I would assume, I'll get your thoughts, Scott, in a second on what you think they're going to do with the Texans receivers, but I would assume we'll see Noah Brown outside more in this spot. Really, it's just such a good spot for Dalton Schultz. We'll get there too. Texans or Bengals side, I think Jamar Chase should play. This dude played through a freaking like broken hip last year, like the guy from the YouTube and Greg Jennings. Chase is a baller, man. He's going to play. T. Higgins won't though. Higgins has a hamstring injury. Other than that, Sam Hubbard's out for this game for the Bengals side, their defensive lineman. Really, really fun game. Obviously, CJ Stroud just went absolutely nuclear. Pat ourselves on the back here, boys. We nailed the Stroud call and really just the game in general last week. This game's really simple though, and especially without T. Higgins. Jake, I'll throw it to you first. I mean, Burrow 6,800. I think everybody's going to be on that. He's going to be massive, massive chalk. And then, we get an easy stack with him and Chase. I expect Chase to be near full go. It sounds like this isn't like a structural problem. He's just got like a bruised back. What do you think, man?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm not too concerned about the back injury for Jamar Chase. Joe Burrow looking like the cash quarterback on both sides. Just a fantastic play with the Bengals throwing, as much or more as any other team in the NFL. Joe Mixon is popping as a great value. Bengals pass rate increasing isn't good for him inherently, but they're winning more games, and that increases his his overall value. Averages like 6 more fantasy points per game in wins than losses over the last 4 seasons. So he's a strong value too. I think there are going to be some cash builds this week where you see people play Burrow, Mixon, and Chase. I think that's fine. Trent Irwin's popping as a pretty solid value with T. Higgins out. I know Scott has some good notes on him. Yeah. Boyd's obviously fine as well. It's pretty easy to like just about everyone on the Cincinnati side with their implied total being what it is. And, just given how much they're throwing, they look like, arguably the best team in the NFL right now.
Scott, do you remember that one week I liked Trent Irwin as a meme? And then like a week later, he had 2 touchdowns, I think. Do you remember that? That was a good time.
Yeah, that was awesome. I do like Trent Irwin over Tyler Boyd this week. I mean, like, how many games did Jamar Chase miss last year? And
Boyd
just did nothing, had no ceiling. Whereas at least like Trent Irwin, I think he had 4 touchdowns in his like 5 games. He cleared 40% of snaps last year. And then when Higgins missed earlier in the year, he saw more targets, more receiving yards, only 3 fewer routes. So I do prefer him. He's a strong value. I think this game is so interesting and it's worth spending quite a bit of time on because like you could just make an entire lineup of these guys and feel great about it. CJ Stroud, just set the rookie quarterback record for passing yards and passing touchdowns. Shout out to us for being all over him last week. Turns out you needed a quad stack him to win all the money, but
shout out to you, bro. You nailed Noah Brown. He was the stone cold nuts cheap upside receiver. I mean, obviously Stroud was just like dot show last week, but man, I mean, a great call there. I think this week though, it's you're right. It's a lot trickier with Woods back. What do you think, man? Do you think it'll be Woods outside? You think Noah Brown will play outside more? What's your lean?
I honestly have no idea. I just know that Robert Woods is still banged up, and when he was healthy, he looked hella dusty. And so
Mechie was dealing with an injury too. I wish we could say we could get him in there more, but he's not there yet.
I just feel so much more comfortable in Brown, who's also 300 cheaper. Believe it or not, he's led the Texans in receiving yards in back-to-back games. And so Tank Dell is going to be one of the highest owned wide receivers of the slate, and rightfully so. He's a great play. But also this offense is way less condensed and more spread out than probably anyone wants to admit. If you look over their last 4 games, Tank Dell has a 23% target share. Dalton Schultz has a 23% target share. Nico Collins, 18%. Noah Brown, 15%. So really, really spread out. Brown is like easily one of my favorite plays of the slate. I think Dalton Schultz is an awesome play as well. Yeah. If you look back over his last 4 games, 8.3 targets per game, 65 plus receiving yards per game. He ranks top 3 in every metric, including first in DraftKings fantasy points per game over the span. He leads the position in end zone targets, exactly as many as Travis Kelce and George Kittle combined. So really good touchdown upside. And then this is a best possible matchup. Bengals are giving up the most schedule adjusted fantasy points per game, 2 tight ends. So I really like all these guys. And I, of course, love Stroud. It was so frustrating how foolishly run heavy they were going. They only had 2 games with a positive pass rate over expectation heading into last week. That's despite ranking 3rd best in yards per pass attempt and 3rd worst in yards per carry. And the head coach came out and he was like, yeah, like we have to be more willing to abandon the run game when it's not working. And we were willing to do that this week. And I assume they're going to have to do that this week as heavy underdogs. And with Damian Pierce out again, Singletary you could play just because he's like insanely cheap, and he did get 77% of the snaps. Like he's not someone I'm super excited to play, but if you need a punt running back, he's clearly your best option. And then just back to Jamar Chase, I think he is going to be the chalkiest wide receiver of the slate. A great note is that over the last 2 seasons, he averages 12 more DraftKings fantasy points per game and 5.5 more targets per game when Higgins has played on fewer than 50% of the team snaps. Just going to be like an absolute alpha. I do worry a little bit about the injury, but like Jake said, like we've seen him gut it out through like a broken hip or whatever it was last year. But I do really like Amon-Ra St. Brown this week, and I think it's going to be close between the 2 of them. Potential edge to St. Brown just due to ownership. But again, just like this is the game. Unfortunately, everyone knows that already, but like this is the game.
Yeah. For what it's worth, I think Chase is like the best play on the slate. I think his back will be fine. Dude, he's going to get a shot before the game and be just fine. Him and Burrow will be dotting it up out there.
Oh, the other thing too is like, I don't know if you've looked at Houston's injury report, but everyone is hurt for them.
Yeah, both their safeties are out. Jimmy Ward is out. I think they're going to get Derek Stingley back. He's coming back from a hamstring injury. That does help them. But yeah, man, they're going to miss a lot of guys here. They're down both safeties. It's an awesome spot for Burrow. Scott, I think you mentioned Noah Brown again at 3,700. Again, you were on it last week. Right there with you. I think Dalton Schultz, though, like that's the one guy I just like want to smash into lineups. All the reasons you outlined, such a good spot. Bengals are really pushing the pass rate. Last 4 weeks, they're like 17% pass rate over expectation, easily leading the league. So if this sticks, like, D'Amico Ryans was basically saying during the week, like, let's just throw away the run game and let Stroud chuck it. Like if that sticks, man, this game is going to go nuclear. I like the Devin Singletary call. I think at 4,700, he's going to be half the ownership he was last week, and this is a way better spot. Bengals have not been good against the run all year. Problem is the Texans have been horrible running the ball all year, which has been sticky. But if they do get, in close a couple times, like he absolutely has 2 touchdown appeal, and that's why we all played him last week too.
Jake, did you talk about Mixon? Did I miss that?
Yeah, no, I mentioned Mixon.
So that would be the obvious leverage play here, right? I mean, he's going to be owned, but
I think he's going to be one of the most popular plays, man.
Yeah, you're going to see a lot of,
he's
Burrow,
so cheap.
Mixon, Chase teams overall, and they're all going to be very popular. I want to second what Graham said on and what Scott said on Schultz. He's just as good of a play, I think, as McBride and Hawkinson, and he's projecting for 8 to 10% ownership. They're projecting for 25. I mean, for tournaments.
Oh, wow. I think he's better than both of them.
Yeah. For tournaments, it's great. For cash, I'd probably still give a slight lean to Hawk and McBride, but I mean, he's right there. They're the same tier. I don't understand the ownership right now.
Yeah, for cash, 3,500 for McBride is just like way too good to pass up.
Yeah,
his route share slipped last week. That's the only thing that really worries me.
It did, but Jeff Swaim has an injury, and
interesting.
Yeah. That's not like the most minor stupid thing on this slate, but I saw that.
Well, that's huge. I appreciate that.
Swaim ran like what 35-40% route share last week. They play a lot of 2 tight end because their other receivers suck, so that's part of it. But
yeah, he was 48% of the snaps last week. Damn.
Yeah, he's not just a blocker too. They like I said, they play a lot of 12. I think we've covered it mostly. Yeah. And no Irv Smith for our boy Thomas Tipple. Irv Smith's #1 fan. Just joking. 49ers Jags. Let's go. Trevor Lawrence, Brock Purdy. Niners are getting 3 over-unders 45. I think Trent Williams will play. That's my lean. He was limited in practice the last 2 days. Be huge, obviously, for Purdy. Jags have struggled at times to get pressure, but getting Trent Williams back would be huge for Purdy. Jack said real quick, Zay Jones is out. I think they're going to put him on IR. This knee thing is like just messed with him all year. He did not practice all week. He didn't practice today. That's about it. Fun game. Really fun game. Scott, I'll throw it to you first, man. I think you can make a case once again for Brock Purdy dubs. 5,700. Debo is full go this week. Jags play a ton of zone. The 3 games that, Debo and IU could play together, targets have been split right down the middle, and both are awesome. What do you think about this game, man?
Yeah, I like it. I think this game has underrated shootout potential. We kind of been saying that about the 49ers for a while now, and their defense has really sort of deteriorated. This is 2 defenses that rank bottom 3 and like fantasy points allowed to opposing outside wide receivers. So obviously great matchups for Brandon Ayuk, Debo Samuel, Calvin Ridley. They're also, by the way, 49ers also suck against the slot. So Christian Kirk also in play. Jaguars are a massive pass funnel as well. They're elite on the ground, but they are giving up a lot to running backs through the air. I kind of want to start with Christian McCaffrey and then work my way down. People are going to look at that price tag and probably just decide that it's too much. But like, if you look at what he's doing, it seems like super warranted. He's 800 more than Eckler, but he's outscoring him by 45%. He's scored at least 1 touchdown in 14 straight games, multiple touchdowns in 2 straight. And over that span has played on 97% of the team snaps. This slate isn't as bad as last week, but it's like still pretty bad. Where like even a down game from McCaffrey like probably helps your lineup. He's hit 22.9 in 6 of 8 games. And then if he has a performance like he did in week 4, 51.7, like you can't profit without him. So he's a player I do like in spite of that tough matchup on the ground. But like you said, I think Trent Williams is back and they've been getting destroyed by running backs through the air. So I think he could get there.
Yep.
That's what I wouldn't be too surprised if Debo gets more of that like wide back role, which we did kind of see prior to his injury. Ayuk has been like playing out of his mind, ranked 2nd among all wide receivers in yards per route run, 3rd in PFF grade. But the production like really hasn't been there. Most of that I think is just bad touchdown luck, or rather McCaffrey's
getting everything
to just steal all the touchdowns, right? But if you look at it as like both him and Samuel have exactly 2 games over 19 DK, and like obviously Debo's played in fewer games. This is they're going again, it's like an easy top 5 matchup, but they're going up against a zone heavy defense. Ayuk was like last year the man beater, but he's been amazing against everything this year.
Yeah. But
still zone is Debo's game.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like Ayuk is twice as good against versus Debo at man, but like they're neck and neck in zone. And you factor in the price differential, 1,900. I do think Samuel's probably the better value, but like both seem like great plays. You could argue neither is a must play just because of, I guess McCaffrey's dominance inside the red zone, but both really good plays. And me on Purdy, like I'm going to have Purdy exposure every single week, just super underrated. People are talking that he's fallen off. I don't see that. Certainly not from a fantasy perspective. He just had more interceptions, and like one of those was off a receiver's hands. Two of them came like immediately after he suffered a concussion. And even if you don't think he's great, this 49ers offense captained by Kyle Shanahan is great. And so if their defense is deteriorating too, that obviously increases the ceiling. I feel like I've been talking for like an hour, so I don't know if Jake wants to take over on the Jaguars side, but
just for what it's worth, I love the weekly plug into Scott Barrett's brain. So I think everybody listening appreciates it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, then I'll keep going. If Travis Etienne, I think is I haven't looked at ownership yet, but Travis
He's not going
Etienne
to be chalky.
Really? So he's one of those players I think should be chalky. He's a highest end bell cow, ranks third among all running backs in snap share. He's priced as the RB7 despite ranking second among all slate eligible running backs in DraftKings fantasy points per game. Tank Bigsby's not a thing. They realized that if his name was Robert Johnson, he would have went undrafted, and that was a mistake. So he gets 0 snaps now, including inside the red zone. It's not it's probably a below average matchup, but it's not much worse than below average. The big thing is just if Jacksonville can keep this close. And now I'll turn it back over to Jake on the Jaguars side. The question there is like, I'm a Trevor Lawrence hater, and it's like, well, they've, been winning in point differential. So they've played it conservatively. This is a game where they wouldn't have to play it conservatively, but it's also, I think, part of that conservatism and low ADOT and all that stuff is a function of the offensive line. And I don't know. I just worry about that against the 49ers' ferocious pass rush.
Yeah.
So I question the upside, but it is a great matchup for both wide receivers who you could argue are cheap. Jake, your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I really like Calvin Ridley this week. He's the cheapest he's been on both sides all season. He's been fairly inconsistent, so you could argue that as a negative. At the same time, for tournaments, doesn't necessarily matter a whole lot. And he's been fairly consistent in good matchups, 16 DraftKings points per game, and 9.7 targets per game in his 3 games against teams that rank among the 10 softest schedule-adjusted matchups to opposing outside wide receivers. This is one of those matchups for Ridley, so I think he's in a really good spot. I do think Etienne will be fairly popular. I would imagine around 18%. He won't go, totally overlooked, but more than good with him. Kirk's in a pretty good spot. Evan Ingram's going to be pretty chalky. I prefer the wide receivers overall if I'm double stacking Lawrence. Ingram's fine, I guess, but yeah, that kind of summarizes my thoughts on the Jags side.
That was the only thing I was going to add, Jake, is Ingram is going to be chalk over on FanDuel, just going through some ownership projections, and it makes sense. He's 5,600 over there, but I'm with you. I love this spot for Ridley. No defense is giving up more receptions per game to outside wide receivers. He's kind of weirdly played in the old Zay Jones role. Like I figured Ridley would like play the true like X alpha receiver. But weirdly, he's kind of reverted into Zay Jones's old usage. I think they're going to get him the ball out of the bye. I think that's like their one thing is he's going to get fed. Just zooming out, like Ridley had those 2. He's had 2 like clearly bad down games. Both were games that we were off of him on. Saints and Falcons both have been awesome against outside wide receivers. And the other 6 games, he's had 7 or more targets in every single game. I really like Ridley this week.
You said you liked getting the glimpse into my brain. I need you to understand like what a hellish nightmare this can be in terms of like what I think about Evan Ingram. So I'm staring at Evan Ingram, 4,500, and I'm like, all right, this is a strong value. On the slate, he ranks 3rd in XFP per game, but he's only priced as the tight end 8. But I question his touchdown upside. He ranks 35th among all tight ends in XTD per game, which is insane for a tight end seeing that sort of.
No, it's not. I looked into this. He has 0 end zone targets. That's insane. It's so fluky. He will get there, but that makes sense. That XTD makes sense because he has 0 end zone targets.
It's insane. So like
That's so weird. For in 8 games for a full-time player like him to get 0 end zone targets is just bizarre.
If DraftKings made touchdowns worth 0 points, like he would be, Stone Cold lock, like 7K tight end. Yeah. That's really what it looks like if you separate the XTD from his XFP. But anyway, matchup is tough on paper. Graham, we've been avoiding Fred Warner for a number of years now, but the schematic matchup is really nice. 49ers play the 5th most man, and like Ingram has been awesome against man coverage. Easily Jacksonville's best receiver, 3.7 yards per route run. So yeah, I basically just ran around in circles here, and the TLDR is he's fine. He's fine.
And that's the plug-in to Scott Barrett's.
Yeah, well, welcome to my hellish nightmare.
Hellish nightmare that turns into DFS goodness. We'll take it, man. In all seriousness, this is if you're playing this game, I think the only way to play it is just stacking the shit out of it. Like we were just talking Texans, Bengals, I mean, if you're playing Stroud, like Dell is a must, Schultz is a must, then you're obviously running back with either Chase or Mixon. In this game, it's the same kind of concepts. I just don't one-off stack this game. That would be my one piece of advice. All right, we spent a lot of time on these first two. Let's keep it moving. Saints at Vikings. Saints are getting 3. Over-unders 41. Real quick, Kendre Miller is out on the Saints side, which is kind of a interesting note. Jamal Williams is really playing more in totality, but Kendre Miller was playing a little bit more in the passing game. The Vikings they activated Justin Jefferson. He was limited all week. They've been super freaking quiet about it. I actually think there's a chance he plays, man. KJ Osborne had a concussion last week, but he got into full practice. He'll play. Same with TJ Hawkinson, and they're going to get Christian Darrisaw back. God help me. I like Vikings +3. Man. This is another could be really fun game. Scott, I'll throw it to you first, man. Josh Dobbs, 5,500. Any interest? Vikings?
Yeah, so that's the thing is if Jefferson plays, like I bump up Josh Dobbs, I bump down everyone else. Like I think he could be really interesting. I'm kind of on him anyway.
I'm on him now with Hawkinson. And if Jefferson plays, I mean, I really like it.
Wheels up, right?
Dude, Dobbs has the sneakiest rushing floor, 40 or more yards in 6 of 8 games. Like O'Connell's so sharp, he's gonna design some runs for Dobbs.
He's the QB 8 since week 2, despite just joining a team like days prior, not even starting, not knowing any of the plays or the players' names. Second most rushing yards of any quarterback. So I like that a lot. I think that's a good call. But like outside of Dobbs stacks, this game doesn't get me too excited. I know Jake likes Hawk and who's banged up by the way, but like as a high floor cash viable tight end, I certainly get it. Chris Olave, you could make the case for that we've been making for a number of weeks, which is just that the XFP is great. The air yards are great. The real yards aren't as great. But this is a favorable matchup. So, maybe he finally comes through this week. Kamara, you can make a case for where, all right, he sucked last week, but before that, he was the nuts every week. I will just say like he is seeing a decline in usage by snap share. Yep. Taysom is getting more usage near the end zone. I mean, he out-carried Kamara last week for goodness sake. So, this game isn't one that really interests me outside of, dabbling in Dobbs stacks.
Yeah. I think that's probably
damn. Sorry. I'm missing someone. Alexander Madison, I think is legitimately sexy. Oh, hell yeah.
Stop it. Alexander Madison and sexy should never be involved in the same
hell yeah. Everyone's tripping over themselves to play the guys who have a ton of XFP, but no actual FP, which is, Joe Mixon, Tony Pollard, Chris Olave, et cetera, et cetera. And like, what about Alexander Madison? No Cam Akers means he's probably full on back to that bell cow workload he had through the first 5 weeks of the season, where guess what? He was by usage and volume, an easy mid-range RB1. I get that he's not good at football. He's not. but he's still due for a regression. And most of that is just really bad touchdown luck, which is something that kind of lends itself towards a regression to the mean fairly quickly. I think he's a strong value. I don't think anyone's going to play him. So, maybe the matchup's not great, but just like legitimately probably top 5 usage. There's some risk that maybe not, but that is my lean.
My thought was like, I think Ty Chandler plays more this time around.
Could be.
He's just a guy though too, man.
Yeah.
The other upside, the other angle is you're right. Like they just revert back to like he gets 78% of the snaps again, and it just comes down to whether he scores a touchdown. My lean was like he's probably a really good projected value, Jake, but like I don't think anybody's gonna be excited to play him, which is probably why Scott's right that he's a good play.
Yeah, I mean he's not projecting incredibly well. I didn't write him up for value. He's kind of a fringe guy for me there. Yeah, I mean I'm fine with him. 10%, 5,500. The potential for 80% of backfield XFP. I think totally good there. Really don't have too much to add on this game. Really, like Hawkinson's a very strong play. He was clearly Dobbs' guy in the 3 quarters that Dobbs played. Hawkinson had 11 targets, 69 receiving yards. Per 4 quarters, he was on pace for 22.5 expected fantasy points, which is the 3rd best workload by any tight end in any game this season.
That's a great argument. Insane volume last week.
Yeah. Derek Carr is going to be like 3% owned. Just save yourself the trouble. Don't play a quarterback who's playing on 78% of his team's red zone snaps.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Not great. Not great.
Does he outscore Taysom this week?
Bro.
Taysom had 15 touches last week.
Honestly.
With like 12 inside the red zone.
Yeah. That's sort of Carr's big problem. So definitely not stacking the New Orleans side. I think Kamara is pretty close to unplayable as well. I'm probably only interested in Olave there. I mean, Shaheed's always in play because he could go for 150 on 3 catches. But
it's not the optimal zone matchup, I think.
Yeah.
They do play a lot of cover 3 though, and that is the one that he's shredding cover 3. Jake, speaking of unplayable, they finally priced up Taysom on FanDuel at $7K, so he's officially unplayable over there. He was like $5K a couple weeks ago, and just the absolute nuts.
I love him so much, dude. He's
he's such a weird but fun player. Imagine like explaining Taysom Hill. He's basically like if Tim Tebow just finally like admitted that he should have been a running back. You know what I mean? Like
Tim Tebow was good.
Yeah.
The question I have is like, all right, you're GM of the Giants. You trade for Taysom Hill and invent a cloning device. How many positions does Taysom Hill start for you? 7?
Right now, 7.
Could a team of all Taysom Hill clones beat the current state of the Giants?
Absolutely.
Dude, give me a Taysom Hill super team. That's what I want.
Taysom has a howitzer. He has a howitzer of an arm too.
I know. Imagine Taysom throwing to Taysom. Unstoppable.
The Taysom to Taysom connection. The Taysom in a tank package, that big defensive tackle, is like the most unstoppable package in the NFL.
Is it better than the tush push?
No, nothing beats the tush push because Hurts can squat like 900,000 pounds. But
what if it's Taysom running the tush push?
Oh, now why haven't they done that yet? Have they done this yet? I don't think they have.
That's a great question. They need to.
I don't think they have. I feel like I would have remembered it. Oh, all right. Before we get too off the rails here, Packers Steelers, we'll breeze through this game. This is the Deontay Johnson game, baby.
All right, you're on it. You're on it.
No Jerry Alexander for the Packers, man. No Quay Walker for the Packers. Steelers side, no Minka. If Jordan Love were good, like this game could be kind of hot. But him and Pickett both stink. Props are hilariously low for this game. Like on paper, like both these offenses should be pretty good, but Pickett has a 205 prop. Love is at like 210. Fun. I do like Deontay, especially with no Jerry Alexander. Scott, you've been waiting all week to talk about him. Here's the floor.
Yeah, definitely don't give this to Jake, who's not on him, because I'm super on him. He's had 75 yards in 3 straight games. He's eclipsed a 30% target share in back-to-back games, including week 8, where he suffered an injury late in the 3rd quarter and did nothing after that. But so basically just threw 2.9 quarters. He had a career high 192 air yards, a 54% target share. Over the last 2 weeks, 24.4 XFP per game, would rank behind only CeeDee Lamb. He scored a touchdown. He scores touchdowns now. And like I said, career high air yards. So this to me is like a new and improved version of him. He's way too cheap. And this was a guy like I always wanted to play anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm super on Deontay. I think he's one of the best plays of the slate. I haven't looked at ownership, so you can let me know what that looks like, Jake, but I love him.
He's not going to be the highest owned wide receiver of the slate, which I kind of thought he was going to be earlier in the week. That makes me like him a little bit more. Cash game must play on DraftKings. I don't want to come off as some Deontay hater. The one thing I will say for tournaments, though, is he scored over 17 DraftKings points twice since Ben Roethlisberger retired, which is not great.
Noted Deontay Johnson hater, Jake.
Oh,
Tribby.
come on.
Yeah.
Give us some values. Come on.
Deontay, I think, is a really strong play. Jake, who do you think is going to be Tank? Highest owned or
no, Chase?
Yeah. Chase,
It'll be
Marquise Brown, Dell would be the top three, I think, pretty clearly.
Yeah.
Hopkins? We'll get there.
He'll be up there. He's not as strong of a value in projections as those other guys. I like Hopkins a lot. We'll talk about him a little later.
Hopkins is
Aaron Jones, I guess, he was fully unleashed like the head coach said he would. 20 carries, 6 targets. Like I said before, that's really good usage.
Still too cheap too, man. He's still
right.
Really cheap at 6,500. Mixon's going to get most of the ownership there, and you could make a legitimate case for Aaron Jones over him. I think
it looks like a
passing down usage is legitimately really good too. Sorry, go ahead.
It looks like a neutral matchup, but like what matters most to Aaron Jones is game script. He's it's Derrick Henry as the archetype, but since 2021, he averages 6 more fantasy points per game in wins and losses. They're underdogs by 3 in this game. I think Najee, you can argue as a theoretical value or a technical value since the team's bye. He's out carried Jaylen Warren 37-22. He's out targeted him as well. His only price is the RB 23. Matchup is pretty good, arguably top 10.
Yeah, he's in play. Najee, this is the first week Najee's in play. This is the only time, dude, as a home, this is like the best Steelers setup of all time. 3-point home favorites. Like that, you can't get a better setup for Najee touchdowns and as a 3-point home favorite.
I'm probably not going to play him just because he's sucked for a year and a half now, but I get it. The numbers backed argument is fully there. Last guy I will shout out is Christian Watson. I know no one wants to hear this, but I'm still a believer. And the matchup's amazing. Pittsburgh is giving up a league high 23.4 fantasy points per game to opposing wide receiver ones, 4,900 price tag, massive ceiling. Don't tail me on this because I'm blinded by irrational love, I'm sure, but I'll be playing him.
I just mea culpa here. Jordan Love stinks. Watching this offense last 2 weeks, guys are open. Ball's not coming out. Christian Watson's open. Ball's not coming out, man. Like,
he also might be hurt. Like he's picked up 6 different injuries this year.
He injured his entire body on that one play last week.
Someone tried to commit insurance fraud against me. I had this like little dent on the side of the car, and they filed it as I totaled their car, damaging the front, rear, and both sides of the car. And it's like, how is that even possible? But yeah, that's basically what happened to Christian Watson.
The one thing I will say about Watson is he's 10th among all players in air yards over the last 2 weeks with 215, but 56th in targets with just 10. Dontavian Wicks is pretty much right there in targets with Christian Watson. If the volume comes, a big game absolutely could. Like Scott said, great matchup. He's going to be 1% owned. But Jordan Love is terrible. So
I don't know why they're not feeding him with screens, by the way, because he scored on 10 of 10 screens. It's so stupid.
I think LaFleur is a good coach in general. And honestly, he's been great for us this year because every single time he's talked about guys that are hurt, he's been 100% truthful. But it is bizarre that they don't get the ball out of Love's hands into Watson's. So even on just shallow crossers, just get him in space. I don't know. I mean, It's like the Bryce Young theory. Everybody's so pissed off about the Panthers coaching. It's like maybe Bryce Young just can't execute those throws. And then it's the same thing with Jordan Love. Maybe he can't execute those throws. I don't think Love can throw over the middle of the field. I mean, there was one throw last week. Jaden Reed was wide open, didn't throw it. I don't have much else from this game, really. I love the Deontay call. I think he honestly, on DraftKings, he should be the highest owned player on the slate. He's getting absolutely funneled the ball. So I love that call. All right, Titans Bucks. Let's talk Levis, baby. I've been excited to talk Will Levis all week. This is a really fun game. We took the over, 38 early in the week. Bucks are getting one. It's basically been a pick 'em all week. Quick injury notes. Treylon Burks is out. Jamel Dean, Bucks corner, has a concussion, but I think he's going to play. It doesn't really matter. It's Will Levis week, though. Absolutely love Levis. DeAndre Hopkins, Jake, at 6K has just been like staring a hole at me all week. 6K for Hopkins with Levis, and I legitimately like a couple of these kind of like fringy guys to dub stack with them. I like Nick Westbrook-Akeen. I think I like Kyle Phillips a little bit more, full-time slot receiver. Levis stacks are live, man. Fun game.
Yeah, I think I'm more on Phillips than Westbrook, just given the recent route shares. But yeah, no, this is a fantastic game. Tampa Bay, top 3 pass funnel. We just saw him get absolutely cooked by CJ Stroud. I mean, it put Todd Bowles on the hot seat, and now we get Will Levis, who's looked pretty good. I mean, I'd say better than expectations in 7 of his 8 quarters that he's played. He's averaging 18 DraftKings fantasy points per game. That's QB8 on this slate. Nobody wants to play him in, Tennessee's super run heavy. So, I get, the prop market's a little down on him. Overall projections aren't, great with Levis, but, it's the perfect matchup. Like it's a pass funnel. He's throwing the ball deep more than any other quarterback. 11.4 ADOT leads the NFL. It's pretty easy to see a big game from him. 5,300, no one's going to touch him. Everyone wants to play Baker in this game, at least in tournaments. I prefer Levis straight up.
Yeah, man, I'm with you. I think Levis is a better play. Mayfield, it feels sharp to fade this week, especially at 10%. If he's going to push 10 to 12%, I give me Levis every single time. Some sharper books have been hammering Mayfield unders all week. I'm tracking props all week. I've been tracking Mayfield's. Levis is really starting to come up. We took his over at I think 212.5. He's up to 220.5 now. I really like Levis, Scott. I do. This game's fun to stack too. I mean, it's so easy to bring back with the Bucks.
Yeah, I wish I was an MME guy, because there are like so many wide receivers I love that I don't think are going to be as chalky as they should be. And DeAndre Hopkins is certainly one of those. He ranks right now 13th among all wide receivers in fantasy points per route run. That is like insane when you consider how bad this passing attack has been. Prior to Will Levis's debut, Tennessee ranked dead last in catchable passes per game by a significant mark. Like, they're worse than the Falcons. They're worse than the Bears. That's how bad they've been. Obviously, in Will Levis's debut, 35 DraftKings fantasy points on only 6 targets. And then last week, production wasn't quite there, but the volume was 150 air yards, 11 targets, ranked 3rd among all wide receivers in XFP. And I think he enjoys the best of both worlds. Great volume, great production against this pass funnel defense, which just gave up nearly 500 yards and 5 touchdowns to CJ Stroud. And somehow they've gotten worse. They could be without both starting cornerbacks this week. Jamel Dean got in a full practice, but he's questionable with a concussion. And we've seen the NFL play it safe with non-quarterbacks who are concussed. And then Carlton Davis, I don't think he's gotten in a full practice. I think he missed I think he probably sits out. So both perimeter corners are out. I think this is scary for Hopkins, who, by the way, looks awesome. This is like, I'm not a tape guy. Like, when it's rare when I give out a tape like this, but this is the best he's looked in years, and he looks like damn good. Kyle Phillips, I think, is interesting. Nick Westbrook-Akeen is interesting. I wrote both of them up, and I spent some time with it, but both guys, even without Treylon Burks, are going to see a capped route share. They're doing sort of like a wide receiver cut by committee with Chris Moore as well, beyond Hopkins. So I don't think none of them are on like the Noah Brown tier from last week, but those are guys to think about.
Yeah, that's the right way to put it. None of them are on that tier, but I Phillips at stone men, he's going to get all the slot work. Is interesting for sure.
Well, you know who's the same price?
Trent Irwin.
Yeah, no, yeah, for sure. Trent Irwin, who I probably like more, but is another my bust, season-long bust. Chigo Okonkwo, who has done nothing all year, but he has a good quarterback now. Will Levis easily leading the league in hero throw rate. And what I think is interesting is Tampa plays zone coverage at the highest rate in the league. And like even factoring in how bad Chig has been this year, he ranks 26th of 150 qualifying receivers in yards per route run against zone. That ranks probably second or third best among all tight ends. Really, they're zone guys. So he's vaguely in play. I'm just bringing up these guys because I'm with you on Will Levis. It's just Nuke is a must. And then who do you include? You can go with any of these super cheap guys. And then the bring back Rachaad White. I mean, so Chigo Okonkwo, bad call by me this offseason. Christian Watson, bad call, but Rachaad White really becoming that player I was hoping he would be. He's been a top 12 fantasy running back in 3 straight games. Uber bell cow, 4th in snap share, 2nd in targets, 8th in carries, top 6 in XFP and fantasy points per game. Best usage of the season came last week. By far led all running backs in both XFP and fantasy points. And so people are going to look at this Titans run defense and, we were scared of them to start the year, but the whole while, they were still giving a lot to running backs through the air, which, is Rachaad White's wheelhouse, but it's also like over their last 5 games, they've ranked 2nd worst on the ground. So they've really struggled in recent weeks. So I like him. And then Mike Evans, it's just, you take out that one game where he left early with an injury. He's just clearly been the guy to me. And he's also looked good. He's had some tough shadow cornerback matchups, but I'm not really targeting him outside of Will Levis stacks, but he would make the most sense to me.
Yeah, Godwin's going to have a blow-up game. I will say last couple of games it has been closer. Like in totality, Evans is the wide receiver 1, but it has been closer since the bye. Godwin's actually out-targeted Evans 33-28. By XFP, he is just like way overdue for a massive game, and this could be a great spot. If Levis is as good as we're all thinking, this game could be really back and forth. Over on FanDuel, Godwin is now at 6,500. I think he's probably one of my favorite tournament wide receivers of the week over there if you're still playing on FanDuel. FanDuel's been really quick to adjust prices for good and bad games. And Godwin is coming off a 2-catch game. So 6,500 for him is a really, really strong price over there. Not saying Mike Evans isn't a good play, he is, but I will say the pricing difference between those two has gotten a little steep. Yeah, man, fun game. I think you're right though. Rachaad is probably the best run back. Jake, what do you think real quick before we move on?
Yeah. I love Rachaad. Definitely my favorite.
Okay. I'll do it. Let's get to the afternoon slate here. Falcons, Cardinals. Welcome back, Kyler Murray. Falcons 1.5 point favorites. 43 is the total. Fun game because we got some fun players back. Drake London is back. Full practice on Thursday and Friday. He is full go. Hopefully Taylor Hospital Ball Heineke, as Joe Dolan likes to call him, doesn't send London back to the hospital this week. He might, though. I was looking at guys. Did you see Heineke's off-target throw rate last week? Horrendous. He's like in the 30% range. He looked awful, too. Charting team hated him. Not surprising. Real quick, Cardinals side. They're not only getting Kyler back, James Conner's going to play. Jonathan Gannon last week was like, yeah, James Conner looks way better now off the knee injury. We'll see it, but before the knee injury, Conner was playing, I think, at the highest rate of his career, which is crazy at 28. Really fun game. Really, really fun game. I mentioned it earlier. Jeff Swaim has a back injury. Kind of a sneaky note to monitor for this game because everybody's going to play Trey McBride this week. He's 3,500 on DK. He's like 5K on FanDuel. He's way, way too cheap. But if Swaim misses, like full-on, full-time route share for McBride. Jake, I'll let you take it, man. First thoughts of this game. Fun game to stack too. It's just hard with the quarterbacks here because it's hard to have much confidence in Heineke, obviously. Then Kyler's, a little bit of a mystery box What do you think, man?
Yeah, I like. I mean, Heineke's fine for tournaments. He has a little bit of that Ryan Fitzpatrick in him, so I understand that. But if I'm playing a quarterback from this game, it's definitely Kyler. I get he's a hypermobile quarterback coming off a major knee injury, so I understand the concern there. At the same time, though, 5,900 is a pretty great price. It's the cheapest he's been since Week 17 of 2019. He averages 22.7 DraftKings fantasy points per game in his healthy starts. That actually leads all slate eligible quarterbacks. So, if Kyler's even 90%, he's probably a great play this week at, 5% in tournaments. Obviously, you're not getting anywhere close to him in cash. A lot better, safer plays there. Beyond that, McBride's going to see great volume. Maybe you could argue against him just, because Kyler doesn't really throw over the middle of the field much. Marquise Brown is going to see great volume. He's way too cheap. He's a cash game must play. At the same time, it's a pretty brutal schedule adjusted matchup on the outside. I believe a bottom 3 matchup for him. So yeah, both McBride and Marquise Brown are pretty strong usage-based values, and I'm fine with both guys. And obviously you're including them in Kyler stacks. Michael Wilson and Rondale Moore were both popping as values this week. Wilson's dealing with a bit of an injury. But Rondale Moore at 3,000, you can justify it. I don't love it. And James Conner was at like a 70% snap share prior to his injury. So he's interesting as a contrarian play. At the same time, again, coming off the injury, it is sort of we really just don't know what we're going to get with this offense, which probably means it's a good leverage spot for tournaments.
Yeah, if Trey McBride's route share was at like 83% last week, like it was the week prior, and nothing else changed, I would say he's easily the best tight end play of the slate. So you kind of threw me for a loop with that Jeff Swaim news. He's questionable. Hopefully he sits. Hollywood Brown, yeah, like one of the first guys I wrote up, obviously like amazing value, basically seeing, fringe wide receiver 1 volume. And sure, he hasn't produced like that, but that's understandable given how bad the quarterback play has been. I will just say, AJ Terrell shadow, bottom 5 matchup.
Yeah.
That can be an excuse to, get away from him if he's chalky, like you said he was going to be. Not playing Rondale Moore. He doesn't exist. He was a Cliff Kingsbury thing. He's not a real person.
Pretending Rondale Moore doesn't exist has been the right call for his entire career. He should be a running back, by the way. He should not be a wide receiver.
Yeah. Drake London. Let's not forget about him. He had a 22.5% target share in 5 straight games. And like over that span, only Stephon Diggs matched that feat. It's a really good matchup. I get no one wants to invest in Arthur Smith and he doesn't have much of a ceiling. He's just a guy who's in play. And then Bijan, I like him. You factor in Arthur Smith being a donkey, he's still a value based on price relative to XFP, price relative to fantasy points per game, certainly price relative to talent. But you could always get away with fading him just based on, Arthur Smith hates him and it's not going to get near end zone looks, but he is a talented player and a technical value, I think.
Yeah, no, he's definitely a value for sure based on price. He's going to get some ownership for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, he should be top 5 in ownership on both sides. He's pretty much a cash game play on FanDuel, though. Although, we have to account for the fact that Tyler Algier is one of the best goal line running backs in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, noted touchdown savant Tyler Algier has to get all the inside 10 stuff. It's law. And you also got to get Jonnu Smith and end around. That's definitely a priority before.
That was like the best sequence ever, right? The Algier handoff and then Johnny jet sweep. Beautiful.
The Falcons offense is basically just basically they succeed in spite of themselves. Like Arthur Smith, you never have to hand it to Arthur Smith, but he gets the offense gets guys open and London's always open. It's just hilarious, the deployment of usage. I will say, I think Kyler Murray is if everybody wants to play Marquise Brown, everybody wants to play Trey McBride, but nobody wants to play Kyler Murray. He's an awesome tournament play. I mean, that's really not much else.
He is, yeah.
I mean, I wrote it up as very simple. Basically at worst, he's a back end quarterback one for the slate, and at best, he's back to 100%, and they give him like 6 to 7 design carries, and he could be the nuts on that. And especially with this week,
he could get there without his legs. But I also wouldn't be surprised if like his legs are fresher than anyone wants to admit. Like, however long he's been out, and he's supposedly been pretty healthy or fully healthy for a number of weeks now. But like Deshaun Watson, when he came back from an ACL, he hit a career high in rushing yards per game, basically the same time that however long it's been, Kyler's been out.
I mean, there was a chance Kyler could have came back by like week 4 or 5, but the Cardinals wanted to tank, and they were tanking last week. It was so clear they were tanking by putting Tune out there. Just one thing, overarching theme for the slate. We're talking about these bottom tier quarterbacks like Derek Carr, 5,800. What's his ceiling really? Like Geno Smith, 5,800. A lot of people are going to play him. What's his ceiling really? Like, Brock Purdy, I think, has like a pretty strong one, especially considering that game. But like Kyler has 30-point ceiling. I really like him. I think that'll do it. Lions Chargers, fun game. Lions are getting 2.5, over-unders 48.5. Really no injury notes. David Montgomery is back to a full practice all week. It'll be, I think, more of a committee this time around. I don't think we're going to see Montgomery get like 70% of the work. I do expect him to get most of the goal line stuff, but I think this will be more of a committee moving forward. Just an awesome game. I think if Higgins were playing and Chase wasn't about to get 19 targets, you could make a case for Amon-Ra St. Brown like we do every single week as the best wide receiver play on the slate, Scott, and especially in this matchup.
Yeah, I was sending a message. What game is this? We're talking about Giants. Detroit.
Lions Chargers.
All right. So I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is like legitimately one of the best plays of the slate. I think he should be right next to Jamar Chase in terms of ownership. And it's weird to me that that's not the case. If you look back at like since his breakout, his last 27 games, when he's played on at least 33% of the snaps, 10.5 targets, 21.7 DraftKings fantasy points per game. And he's been at his best most recently. He's hit 100 receiving yards in 5 of his last 5 fully healthy games, averages 14.3 targets per game over his last 3 games. I don't know why we're not viewing him as like a fully healthy Justin Jefferson with Kirk Cousins, because all of the numbers back that up and maybe even more than that.
Jake, what do you think, man?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm with you. I think, Amon-Ra is a great play. I prefer, Chase in a vacuum, but you get a bit of an ownership discount there. You could argue they're roughly equal in tournaments. I'm more than fine with it. I think this is a great spot for Goff. We generally don't want to play him on the road, but he averages 25 DraftKings fantasy points per game when the Lions implied team total is over 25 or 26 this week. So, it's just a fantastic spot against a very weak Chargers pass defense.
Yeah, I think some of the home road splits for Goff are really just favorite dog splits. I looked into this, like in his 11 games since last year as a favorite, he's averaging like nearly 300 yards per game. Granted, 9 of those 11 games have came at home, but last time he was a road dog, he threw for 353 and 2 touchdowns against Tampa. Obviously, we're targeting quarterbacks against Tampa every single week, but same goes for the Chargers. I will say Goff over on FanDuel 8K, he's kind of out of play for me. I think Burrow at 8,200 is just straight up better play, but Goff 6,400 I think is really, really interesting over on DraftKings, especially considering he's not going to get a whole lot of ownership. I like that a lot. Flipping over to the Chargers side, man, this offense, like, I can't believe I'm saying this, but like, we need Josh Palmer back. Like, they have no boundary receivers that can get open. Like, Sauce Gardner was out here just shutting down Johnston last week. They're freaking running Jalen Guyton out there.
It's
brutal. It's brutal.
Really tough. Yeah, Quentin Johnston is like 97th or something in yards per route run. Just terrible. I was talking to Chris about it just to see if he had seen anything on film, and he's like, yeah, they're just not making an effort to get him the ball. It doesn't seem like they value him like they value Josh Palmer. And I guess you could make an argument that at 4,100, he's getting 90% of the routes. Maybe a Josh Palmer-esque workload would come, but prop market, even projections don't really seem to believe that. It's tough sledding out here for Johnston.
Yeah, man, it's brutal. It's brutal for Herbert too. It just like really caps his ceiling in this spot. Like, I'm not super excited to play Herbert anyway. I think Lions defense is good, but like, just having to funnel your entire offense through Keenan and Austin Eckler just is not conducive to big quarterback scores. What do you think about the Chargers side here, Scott?
I think Eckler probably pops as a better technical value than McCaffrey. I don't know that I would go that route. I really haven't decided on my rankings yet, but I certainly get it. 14 to 16 carries in every game thus far, 7 targets in back-to-back. No Mike Williams, no Josh Palmer. Obviously, they'll probably have to lean more on Eckler. I want to give more of a shout out to Laporta. He has seen double-digit targets in 2 of his last 3 games. He's flashed like a uniquely high ceiling for the position. Chargers giving up the 4th most schedule adjusted to tight ends. But what's really interesting to me is they play man coverage at the 2nd highest rate in the league. Among all receivers, Laporta ranks 8th, easily best among all tight ends in yards per route run against man. He's nearly at 3.0. And this is like him in college too. He's just like an insane man beater. Obviously Amon-Ra is like even more elite against man, but definitely like those 2 guys as, one-off lineups. And then everyone else in this game is like only really intrigues me. I think, maybe Eckler is an exception for game stacks. And like, there is obviously credence to game stacking this when this game offers the highest over under. It has a shootout spread. I get that Justin Herbert's kind of fallen off a little bit, but he's still been, close to, just Justin Herbert of old with like massive spike week potential. Keenan Allen, obviously, he's kind of fallen off since the Mike Williams injury, but he's still a guy who can get like 15 catches in a game. It's a good matchup for him too. Lions are a bit of a slot funnel, at least on paper.
Has Keenan fallen off, or has he just run into 3 hard matchups? Like Chiefs are pretty good against slots. I mean, obviously Jets are awesome. I think this is a great spot for him.
That's a great point. And the Jets too are also they take away your first read better than any defense. Yep. And like, obviously, that's going to be Keenan on this offense.
Herbert just stunk last week. Like, I'll just call it for what it is. Like, he just stunk. Austin Eckler dropped 3 passes. I mean, that offense was inept last week. They're going to get it. I think they'll get it going this week, but I was just saying for Herbert, it's hard to see a ceiling for him. I do like Goff for tournaments though. Quite a bit.
So I would love Goff because like this is a top 3 matchup. But not the most perfect schematic matchup. But more importantly, it's a road game where he like really sucks on the road. It has no ceiling on the road. You could say it's a dome game, and maybe that matters more because he has baby hands. But I looked into it. He's struggled in road dome games as well. It's a small sample size, so it could just be variance. But that is something that's been like super real, and like you haven't lost any money fading road Goff over the past few years.
Yeah. I mean, he did just throw for 350 and 2 touchdowns against the Bucs, but I mean, there's definitely some stickiness though to the road, like home road splits for sure. I just think the more sticky thing for him is just when they're favorite, like he just smashes. I will say, as much as I like Goff, like this could easily be a David Montgomery 2 touchdown game, and like Lions, that's where all the scoring goes is just through these backs.
I will say I like Gibbs more than Montgomery. Because the matchup, Chargers, like this is total opposite to the past few years, but they've been elite on the ground, especially in recent weeks, far more vulnerable through the air. The game script also works more in Gibbs' favor. I could see Monty, like you said, having a 2 touchdown game, but that just seems like something where you just bet that, like you bet straight up Monty to score twice, because that's the only way he gets there, where at least like Gibbs could get, 6 catches and that's his touchdown and he scores on top of that.
Yeah, man. I think Gibbs is a really strong tournament play on DK. FanDuel, he's pretty much out of play at 8K. But yeah, I like Gibbs for all those reasons. And I think there's a legitimate chance that Gibbs like straight up gets more early down work. Like he looks incredible. It might be one of those situations where like he's just so good they can't take him off the field. That being said, David Montgomery's been really good too in his role. So yeah, fun game, man. I think that'll do it though. Giants Cowboys. Oh baby, the G-men, 17-point dogs. This got through 15.5 to 16, through to 17. Over unders 39. My injury notes for the Giants is that they're dead. I think we can just leave it at that. Cowboys, Kevontae Turpin, their return man, is questionable. I don't think he's going to play, but this game is, I mean, God help the Giants in this spot. Scott, Tony Pollard, man, like every single week, like we're broken records. The Spider-Man meme is just Tony Pollard pointing at Chris Olave, waiting for a big game. But I mean, you can't really ask for a better spot, right? Like 17-point favorites. There will be a way for Pollard not to get there, but
I don't think it's the right spot, Graham.
Really?
So he's super chalk, right?
Yeah.
And everyone keeps asking me what's going on with Tony Pollard. The XFP is there. The backfield share is there. What's going on? And like the big thing to me is Dallas hasn't played in any normal games. It's either like positive blowouts or negative blowouts where he's not doing anything in the fourth quarter. And like, what does this look like to you? But just like you want positive game script, but too much like uber positive, uber blowout game script can be a negative. And so like when he's this chalky, Jake, tell me, what is he, like top 3 running back of the slate? You can get away with fading him. So I think he probably goes over owned, but like I certainly get it. Highest implied point total of the slate. They should just truck the Giants. He's also underperformed and been inefficient. And so like everyone's picking this to be the get right spot, and maybe it is. But you know, it's an easier decision for me to go against the crowd when he's this highly owned.
That's the fairest point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dick,
he only averages 14.4 fantasy points per game in the 4 games that Cowboys have won by 14 or more points. So, you know, that's tough. I'm kind of with Scott. You know, he's going to be one of the 3 highest owned running backs on DraftKings. I think for tournaments, you could certainly get away from him. Yeah. And I looked at last year too. In the 4 games where the Cowboys were double-digit favorites last season, their backfield averaged 28 expected fantasy points per game. That's only about 10% better than their collective backfield XFP this season. So, you know, you're not seeing a huge backfield usage boost from these blowout scripts that, you know, we have a pretty decent sample size for Dallas in these games. And the running backs really haven't gotten there. At the same time, though, I mean, you know, 28 implied team total. Someone's going to have to score all these touchdowns. Pollard could just get there on that. The usage has been pretty strong overall.
Yeah. 2 things. I tweeted this out earlier this week, but in the 3 games that have been close, Cardinals, Chargers, and Eagles, Pollard has played 86, 80, and 76% of the snaps. And like, if we just zoom out, like that's bananas. Like that's the usage we all thought we were getting and we would have been thrilled with when we were taking Pollard in the second round. I'll also say Pollard leads all running backs in XFP per game inside the red zone, more than Christian McCaffrey. But he's like 23rd in actual fantasy points scored in the red zone. So all I'm saying is like, if Pollard had one game on his ledger where he like smashed as a huge favorite, I think we would have some more confidence. This to me just screams get right. But Scott, for all the reasons you said, I mean, it's been right every single week to fade Pollard as chalk, including last week. He was chalk again. And, I think that was probably the spot to fade him in. Obviously, Eagles are obviously incredible on run defense. I
just want to like reiterate, I could definitely see that bearing me. Like I'm not going to full fade in, but
no, dude, I think fading Pollard is probably the right call. Like just technically process wise this week, it's probably the right call.
He had 2 touchdowns when he faced off in week 1. And like, then he had like 1.9 XCD the next week. That's like come down, but like this could easily be a 2 touchdown spot, but it could also, you know, just, this game could be over by the second drive. Like it basically was in week 1.
Yeah. I in Market Report this week, I accidentally wrote Danny DeVito instead of Tommy DeVito. And Joe caught it, luckily, before we push publish. But honestly, we should have just rolled with it because I would rather see Danny DeVito.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah,
there's a case to be made if you're like a Millie Maker player to play Lamb and Dak, just because they've been so money the past few weeks. That what is that? QB1, wide receiver 1 over the last 2 weeks. Probably this game is over by the second quarter, but you never know. 1 out of every 6 times it doesn't go that way, and those guys blow up.
Yeah, I mean, the Giants run a ton of man coverage. CeeDee Lamb is 4th among 149 qualifiers in yards per hour run against man, 7th in fantasy points per hour run against man. So it is, schematically, it's a pretty solid spot.
Yeah, well, I did just look, Scott. If it's not this week for a get right spot for Pollard, it's next week because they get the Panthers, and the Panthers do nothing to give up touchdowns.
Nice, yeah.
Back, so maybe this is the week you fade Pollard one more time and just hold on, and then just put everything.
And then no one's on him next week.
Yeah,
after he flops this week, that'd be great.
Is that game on Maine? I didn't even look. I think it is. Should be. Anything else in this game? I mean, we're obviously full fading Giants. 11-point implied team total. Scott, I think that's the lowest point total I think I've ever seen for a team. Your poor Giants, man. I'm sorry.
Jake Ferguson is a decent play, solid value. I think it's fine. I mean, it's like someone has to score these touchdowns, so I get the game's gonna get away from them. And
Trevon Diggs.
yeah.
Dallas defense.
Micah touchdowns, and that's that.
Yeah. Micah Parsons is gonna sack fumble twice. There you go.
I think Dallas defense is more expensive than Devin Singletary on FanDuel, and he's probably gonna outscore him too.
Oh boy.
By the way, we love Tommy DeVito in this house. Are you kidding me? Like, if he gets us a top 2 pick, I'm not buying a Kalen Williams jersey. I'm buying a Tommy DeVito jersey, and I'm wearing it for the next 15 years.
Legend, dude. That was my question. Do they bring Tyrod back, or do they just say, fuck it, we're 2-7, let's just tank this?
I hope they do that. I really hope they do that. Dable might be worried about his job. If I'm the GM, I'm just like, bro.
Yeah.
Do what's right, and you'll stay another year.
Yeah. All right, let's close it out here, boys. Durs and the Seahawks, Commander Seahawks. Seahawks getting 6.5. Over under is 44.5. No real injury notes in this game. Curtis Samuel should be back. He's been limited practice all week. He might be limited in this game. Just something to note. You're not really playing Curtis Samuel, obviously, but if you were to miss again, would condense things a little further. Geno, man, it's Geno chalk week. He does project really well, obviously very easy to stack, and obviously a great bounce back spot. I'm into Geno, but like he just has not had a ceiling this year. His best finish among quarterbacks and like weekly finishes is like QB9. We need Washington to push this week, and I'm kind of out on Washington here. I think Seattle's defense is legit. Obviously, they gave up some production last week to Ravens, but they kind of held Lamar in check. What are your guys' thoughts on this game? I think this is one of the trickier games on the slate. Jake, I'll ask you first, man.
Yeah, I do think Geno's going to go a little overowned. I mean, it's it's the best schedule adjusted passing matchup possible. So, that's pretty much the argument by itself. But like you mentioned, Graham, I mean, just really hasn't had a ceiling. I think on the Seahawks side, the guy I'm the most interested in is DK Metcalf, if only for the fact that Emmanuel Forbes has gotten cooked so bad by AJ Brown. I mean, he weighs as much as I do. Emmanuel Forbes, that is. And
wait, you weigh as much as DK Metcalf?
No, I don't weigh 235.
You wear it well, Jake.
Yeah, that'd be pretty neat. No, but like DK Metcalf, is a pretty similar player in terms of just how he bullies corners to AJ Brown. So, I think there's a pretty good argument for him there. I do still have some interest on the Commander side, if only because in every conceivable scenario, they are dropping back as much or more than any other team, whether it's with the lead, playing from behind, on first down, in the red zone. They're first in basically every, passing volume stat. So, that's the argument for Howell, who's been running. And, outside of the sacks, he's on pace to set the sack record. But outside of that, he's looked pretty decent. So yeah, I am really curious on Scott's thoughts here because I imagine he has some contrarian takes.
Yeah, I like Howell. I like Howell every single week. He hasn't been great from an NFL perspective, although he's improved over the last few weeks. A lot fewer sacks, a quicker time to throw. You nailed it. This is one of the most pass-heavy offenses in football. If you adjust for, game script and situation, the top 4 pass-heavy teams in the league are Kansas, Cincinnati, Buffalo, and Washington. From a fantasy perspective, he has exceeded 17 fantasy points in 7 of 9. QB 10 across the full season, decent spike week potential. It's not a great matchup, but it's not all that prohibitive to me. You can make a case for any wide receiver. I actually think Curtis Samuel's a decent value. His production's been pretty decent at his price, maybe no ceiling, but it is a slot funnel matchup. McLaurin, I think, is a little underpriced. What's interesting, I didn't write this up. I think it's kind of noisy after digging into it, but Seattle ranks top 3 against wide receiver 1s and bottom 3 against wide receiver 2s. So who knows? Maybe it is a Dotson week.
Scott, pull that from week 4 to now, because that's when Devon Witherspoon and Reek Woolen both got healthy. So rerun those numbers from 4 to 9 and see what happens. Because I'd be curious about that, because they're I mean, by schedule adjusted fantasy points in that span, they're like 6th or 7th best, I think.
So they shut down Zay Flowers, who I was calling the wide receiver 1. Amari was fine. Jamar Chase, 680, 0 touchdowns. So that was disappointing. Where Boyd actually he scored a touchdown. And then the Giants, you don't have a wide receiver 1. And then, first 3 weeks, Tutu went off, Amon-Ra went off, Thielen went off.
Oh, there you go. Witherspoon didn't play those games. I think he was out weeks 1 and 2, and his first game was week 3, if I remember right. I don't have it in front of me, but
so maybe downgrade McLaurin. That's a good call. Logan's also one of those guys, like tight end, super volatile. He had 13 target game 1, so he's in play, just like steady.
Yeah, Witherspoon did not play week 1, but did play week 2. I think Reek Woolen missed a game in there. Yeah, McLaurin 5,800 popped out to me too, Scott. I think just in general, you can make the volume-based argument for all the reasons that Jake was saying. They're just so pass-heavy. I think that's definitely one that stuck out. But the one guy I kind of do like is Logan. Seahawks, if you can like point to one thing that they're not great at, it'd be to the tight end. So I do like that. But yeah, with Samuel back, this things could get spread back out pretty easily, where all these dudes get like an 18% target share.
So I want to talk Seattle side too. You could fade DK and Lockett, because those guys have been bust from easily a season-long perspective, but also lack of ceiling games from a DFS perspective. But it's like this is the best possible matchup. You could lean towards Lockett because I guess he's cheaper and more productive in recent weeks. But really what I think that is like every Seattle beat writer is speculating that Metcalf is more hurt than anyone's aware of. Like he's seriously banged up. So that would be my slight lean, but like to Jake's point, like DK Metcalf versus Emmanuel Forbes is like one of the most egregious mismatches of all time. It's like insane. So, he could just go nuclear. Personally, my favorite is JSN.
Yeah, you read my mind, because I was just about to say we got to talk JSN, because he's like the one. He's capping Lockett and Metcalf here.
So he led the team in receiving yards last week. He had twice as many catches as the next closest receiver, but better than that, he had a 41% first read target share. That ranked 5th most among all receivers on the week. This might not mean anything. Like it was a super weird game from Seattle. They averaged only 3.2 yards per play. It could also signify an impending breakout. It's a good matchup. It's also a good schematic matchup. They play, Washington plays too high at a top 5 rate, and JSN's been the most efficient receiver against too high. So I think that's interesting. Definitely like him and think he goes overlooked. Yeah. It reminds me of Cole Kmet. Like Cole Kmet had 11 targets, and then I was just like, this isn't real. Screw this. And then he scored 2 touchdowns and was like the tight end 1 of the slate. And so it's like, maybe this isn't real, but maybe this is, we'll be on this a week before everyone else.
Yeah, JSN had been like getting just enough targets to kind of cap Metcalf and Lockett. And I think that's one of the main reasons we've seen no ceiling games from those two. Also, Geno's just regressed. I mean, that's also the most obvious thing here. And one of the most obvious tournament plays of the week to me is Ken Walker. the Seahawks have a 25-point implied total. I think it's fifth highest, just in general on the full slate. Somebody's got to score these touchdowns, and Walker is third among all running backs in inside the 10 carries at 18. Josh Jacobs and DeAndre Swift are the only two guys that have more. Zach Charbonnet is playing more, but Walker's been dealing with apparently like a calf and a chest injury. There's something there. There's a chance Charbonnet just, plays more again this week. But I think if they get in close, Walker has the touchdown upside, and nobody's going to play him. I don't think anybody's going to play him.
I think this is one of those easy, like positive versus negative game script committees.
Yeah.
And, you see that with Walker's numbers. He averages like 7 more fantasy points per game and wins than losses. And guess what? Good news. Seattle's favored by 6.5 points. So yeah, for sure could see a spike week from him this week. And he probably goes overlooked because of those Charbonnet splits, which I don't really treat as real.
Yeah, well, they got blown out last week because Geno was awful, and then like I said,
he was hurt the week before that. And yeah, and even though they got blown out, like negative game script, Walker's still like 9 of 13 carries, 1 of 2 targets through the first 3 quarters. That was still RB1 usage for me, and game script, which like suits Charbonnet's skill set significantly more.
Yeah, and they like Charbonnet and pass pro too. So if Geno has to chuck it 40 times like he did last week, it makes sense that Charbonnet is going to play more. All right, I think that'll cover it, boys. You want to make a lineup here? I got the optimizer set up. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's go. Somebody earlier asked if you could play both Chase and Amon-Ra in the same lineup. Do you guys have a take on that? I mean, I think there's enough value on the board that you could probably find a way to make that build work.
Let's see if we can make it work here. Thomas, you all good, man?
By the way, the under hit.
Oh my god!
Oh, is this the first one all year?
Hell yeah!
Oh my god!
Wow!
Under betters finally hit. Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Look at that overlay. Well done. Round of applause. Looks great. Let's do it. Where do you guys want to start here?
Levis lineup, I guess, because Burrow, Stroud is too easy. We'll have some fun with it.
All right, let's do that. I want to see something here. Yeah, Geno, nice. All right, we'll lock in Levis with Nuke. I typed in Nuke, not his DK name. All right, and then bring back. I think we all agreed Rashad.
Yeah.
Right? Right.
Oh, yeah.
Bring back Rashad. Now what? Do we want to have a second Titans receiver, or do you want to figure that out later?
We could jam at least one of Chase or Amon-Ra.
Yeah. I think Chase is just the nuts, so I'm gonna say Chase. I would like to have a bring back with that too, especially since
Noah Brown, our boy.
Yeah, that was my first laner, Dell. Scott, what do you think?
Yeah, I like them both a lot. We're already contrarian. Like I'll probably prioritize Brown in chalkier lineups, but
yeah, that's my thought. Let's go Dell. He's 5,500. It's such a strong price for him. Even if Collins were in, it'd be a decent price for him. Nate Long says got one build with Levis, CMC, St. Brown, and Chase. Yeah,
that's spicy.
Like it. Yeah,
$1 million locked in.
I like it. Oh, you know who's better, actually? You know who shouldn't play? Let's not play Dell. Let's play Schultz.
Well, then what's our dub stack? Or I feel like for the upside, you need in this pass funnel matchup. I don't know if we mentioned that before, but that's another reason I like him.
Yeah.
Not to expect much from Derrick Henry.
I would rather play Kyle Phillips than Chig. Chig is just dead.
Okay. Well, part of the reasoning is just tight end's so gross and wide receivers so good. Like, why play Kyle Phillips?
Yeah.
When we could play Deontay or one of these other guys.
Okay. For sure, we're playing Deontay over Dell. They're the same price. So what the hell are we talking about here? We got to get Deontay in this lineup. I put in Schultz. We should double, but I don't think you don't have to double with Levis. You could just play Nuke. I mean, Nuke could easily just have 5 for 130 and 2 touchdowns, and nobody else does anything. So,
you're right. That's a good point.
Yeah. We need. You know what? I'm just gonna run it.
Here, tell me who we have.
See what the optimizer spits out. We got Levis, White, Chase locked, Hopkins locked, Schultz locked, Deontay, and then the optimizer spit back out Marquise and Joe Mixon. I like that. I don't know how I feel crazy about Mixon and Chase together, but I don't mind it. If we wanted to, we could go up at receiver, but I kind of like it.
Yep. Yeah, I like that team too.
Yeah. All righty. $1 million lineup. You guys were here for it. There you go. Guys, great week, great show, hour and a half of just absolute fantasy goodness. Everybody, good luck this week. Hope to see you guys at the top of the leaderboards. For Scott, for Jake, for Thomas behind the glass. Appreciate you guys. Week 10, good luck.